What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Derek and Cody with you. And guys, some developing news out of Philadelphia. According to Ian Rappaport's sources, Eagles All-Pro edge rusher Hasson Reddick has received permission to seek a trade following another disruptive season featuring double-digit sacks. The 29-year-old with 27 sacks over the last two seasons in Philly could land elsewhere. So Hasson Reddick, Cody, has been given permission to seek out a trade. Listen, man, we've had a lot of good things to say about Hasson Reddick. What's your initial thoughts here on the idea of maybe Chris Ballard having the idea of bringing in Hasson Reddick in a trade this offseason?
So I have two thoughts. Number one, the Shane Steichen connection. Obviously, Shane Steichen was there the 1 year of overlap with Hasson Reddick, the season where he had his career. And again, obviously, Shane Steichen on offense, but Hasson Reddick, 16 sacks that year back in 2022 with the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think there is that connection. He does know Hasson Reddick. But also, I look at it, Derek, and I say, you know, this one thing we've talked about, this Colts pass rush over, gosh, it feels like forever, is, you know, we've seen flashes from this group, but the one thing we've said this group lacks is word consistency, right? And if you look at Hasson Reddick, really over the last, I would say, 4 seasons, so one with Arizona, one with Carolina, and the last 2 with Philadelphia, Derek, he is a model of consistency when it comes to getting after the quarterback. You know, he is just so darn consistent at getting after the quarterback. I mean, Derek, this is a guy that you and I, when he became available as a free agent, we were so upset at Chris Ballard for not going after him the first time, because it's like very rarely do players of that caliber hit the open market or become available. And so, like, we were upset because the Colts didn't go after him, right? And that was such a guy that was so disruptive. And we saw, obviously, what he's done with the Philadelphia Eagles the last couple seasons. And that was a position that you had just swung and missed at so many times. And so when I look at those two things, those two factors, I look where the current pass rush is. Derek, I've talked about it before, and I know we both, you know, thought this. Like, you have a lot of good young guys, or you have some guys that you like what you have, but you don't have that true alpha pass rusher. And Hasson Reddick is that. And he's 29 years old. So again, he's not like the youngest guy in the world, but he's still got a good number of years left on, you know, in his career. And you think, man, you know, if you've been looking and searching, you know, this could be the big splash that you were looking for if you're Chris Ballard, if you're Shane Steichen, and finally get that position on lock for the next number of years. I just look at that and I say it makes a lot of sense, Derek, with the connection there and with, you know, the inconsistency at pass rush. So, man, for me, I look at that and I say, why not bring Hasson Reddick in? Again, what will it cost? I don't know. We'll probably get into that here in a little bit, but this is like a rare opportunity to get one of the better pass rushers in the NFL. And I don't really care what it takes at this point, Derek, but I think you need to get a player like Hasson Reddick's caliber, because you don't have anybody that's even sniffing that currently in your defensive end room, especially. So get an elite edge on, you know, that would just change so much. I really, truly believe that for your defense. And, you know, if it's a first-round pick, if it's a second-round pick, if it's a bundle of picks, I think you look at that and you say, taking a chance on a guy, not even a chance, but, you know, giving away some draft capital for a proven commodity in this league, it's a no-brainer to me, Derek. You absolutely need a player like Hasson Reddick. So that is my personal opinion on it. And again, I know I'm a lot higher on the need for edge than a lot of different people. You know, I know some people would say corner, some people would say playmaker, you know, all those things. But I truly believe that an elite edge would change so much for this defense. So that's kind of my thoughts when it comes to Hasson Reddick, because, you know, you missed on him once. Don't make the same mistake twice, Chris Ballard.
Yeah. Anyone that's been following this podcast for pretty much the last 3 years knows how I feel about Hasson Reddick and what he can be for a team. I mean, I was pounding the table for this guy after that last season in Arizona in 2020, when he had that 12.5 sacks. I said, this guy took a ginormous leap in that last year in Arizona. And I'm saying, go and get him. And then obviously he went to Carolina for a year, only on that 1 year prove it deal. And then he proved it again. And then here he was in Philly with, obviously this Philly defense, and has, again, never had a season in which he hadn't had a double-digit sack season, which is, again, something that Indy has not seen in a very long time from any of their defensive linemen. So for anyone that wants to say that this is not a good move, Hasson Reddick has been a better pass rusher over the last few years than anyone has been for Indianapolis in a very long time. So that is off the board. And I know a lot of people want to talk about the age. Yes, he is 29 years old right now. Most likely will be, I'm trying to look at when his birthday is. He will be 30 when the season starts this year. I totally get that. But you have that option at the end of next year to be able to extend a contract. So what Indy would have to do is, if they trade for Hasson Reddick, they'd have to take up that contract, or at least most of it, in my opinion. Which at this current moment, the contract that he has currently with the Eagles is a 3-year, $45 million contract. So you're paying $15 million this next year for a guy that can get you double-digit sacks? I mean, that sounds pretty good for only $15 million in comparison to a lot of the other guys out there who are getting you double-digit sacks, and you have to pay $25 to $30 million a year for them. I would say that is a relatively good deal. And Indy could obviously decide in that next year, like I said, if they want to keep him around. And Chris Ballard has had his fair share of trades and free agent signings from older veteran edge guys who have come in and have been good, solid pieces for them in the past. But I think Hasson Reddick still has a lot left in the tank for a player of his caliber. I think ultimately, Cody, the reason the stats don't look as great this year versus what we've seen over the last 4 years with Hasson Reddick has mainly just been the Philadelphia defense lost their coordinator, right? Jonathan Gannon, they lost him. That defense was clearly not good last year in almost any aspect. The only aspect of the game that they were actually good at was getting to the quarterback. And Hasson Reddick was a big reason for that. And anyone that wants to say that Hasson Reddick is not worth it, Hasson Reddick has shown he can be a great pass rusher either by himself or with a great defensive line unit. And Indy has a good fair share of great guys who you can pair along with. You have DeForest Buckner. You have Samson Ebukam. You have Dio Adangbo, who's ascending. Like, that's a great set of guys for him to be able to go alongside in this entire endeavor. And like you said, Cody, it just adds another element of consistent pass rush to this defense that will make you better next year. Now, ultimately, like we're saying here, the Indianapolis Colts would have to trade for him. He's not going to be a free agent. So, it would have to be a trade of some kind. Now, of course, Howie Roseman and Chris Ballard have had their fair share of run-ins with each other over the past couple years, most infamously the Carson Wentz trade. But they have had their fair share of coaches and players go back and forth within each other's organizations before. So there's a lot of good faith in that regard with Howie and Chris. Cody, what do you think the Colts would be able to trade for there? Or what would you give up in exchange to try to get Hasson Reddick?
So here's the thing. If possible, I want to keep the first round pick. I want to keep pick 15 if possible. And I wonder, with Hasson, like you said, going to be 30 this year, does that decrease his value at all?
I think it does.
As opposed to if he was mid-20s, where it's okay, he's a pass rusher in his prime, that's coming off an 11-sack season. So I would be comfortable with really anything from round 2 on. But The first round pick, if I can keep that, I feel really, really good about that. And Derek, you think about it, like, you're not probably most likely you're with that second round pick, or even if it was second and a third, you're not finding a player of Hasson Reddick's caliber. Most likely. Again, you could be wrong. You could find a diamond in the rough. But again, Derek, like, for me, I look at that and I say DeForest Buckner is right around that age too. So you're not getting any younger with some of your stars on that defensive line. Grover Stewart, same way, right? He's around 30. So for me, I just look at that and I say, you know what? You're in a position with your defensive line where, you have a couple young guys, but you have guys that you fully expect this unit now to produce at a high level. And so I look at that and I say, Hasson Reddick's going to be 30. He's, pair him with DeForest Buckner, pair him with Grover, and just continue to try to work with Samson Mabukum and some of these other guys and, find some consistent pressure. And obviously, getting a new defensive line coach in Charlie Partridge, you hope that takes some of those young guys to another level. But Derek, if you're seriously wanting to compete, if you believe AR is your guy and he's going to be the guy to lead you, to the playoffs this next year, you need that consistent pass rush. And Hasson Reddick, I truly believe, even though he's going to be 30, I mean, Derek, we've seen these pass rushers playing to their mid-30s. So I do believe that you could get another 3, 4, 5 years out of him. Maybe not 5, but you know what I mean? Like, you could get a good amount of years left for him on this team, and you'll get some consistent pass rush and kind of, fill that position for a little while. I truly do believe that. And like you said, it's going to be a lot cheaper than probably some of the other guys you're going to go after, like a Brian Burns or somebody like that if they hit free agency, Josh Allen, some of those guys. So I look at that and I say, hey, like, that would make a lot of sense for me, just to give up some day 2, day 3 picks, or whatever it is. I don't know how big the market will be for Hasson Reddick, and maybe there is a team willing to give up a 1, but if possible, keep the 15th overall pick. I think for me, I would be happy with that. I'd be overjoyed with that. But again, maybe it does take pick 15. But if not, I mean, I would be overjoyed if you were able to keep that and still get a player of Hasson Reddick's caliber. So that's kind of what I'm looking at, Derek, when it comes to the compensation. Just because he's a little bit older, you think maybe that will kind of contribute into, some of those things. I'm not entirely sure, but that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I don't think in any way, shape, or form you're giving up 15. I don't see Ballard doing it either. And I don't even think it's worth that because, again, he has been one of the best edge rushers in the NFL over the last several years. But like we said, he's going to be 30 this year. And everyone knows when that 30 number hits, you have to start worrying about things. And yeah, you had to trade away a number 1 for DeForest Buckner way back in the day, but DeForest Buckner was also in his mid-20s. So he was a lot more in his prime age, and everybody knows that's what's going to happen. There's no situation in which I don't think, unless Philly is trading with someone in the high 20s, which is very possible, that could very well be a thing, which would be something that Indy would have to try to work against. But I'm willing to give up my seconds and thirds all day long if that's what it takes to get Hasson Reddick. Now, Cody, I'm a little less influenced to want to give Kwity Paye to the Philadelphia Eagles as well. I was originally thinking that in my head, but at the same time, hearing you talk about the age thing, you're absolutely right. Indy is going to have a problem here in about when Anthony Richardson eventually gets that contract that we're all thinking he's going to get. That's when you're going to start seeing the rapid decline of this defensive line because you're going to be missing out on DeForest Buckner. You're going to be missing out on Grover Stewart. You would be missing out on Hasson Reddick if you were to get him. And then obviously if you trade away Kwity, then that's just one more player that you have to try to substitute for in the process of losing all of your veteran guys. Now, I mean, if that's a key component to helping to unlock this situation, then do it. Because I'm all for it. I hate to say it, but I also am there when it comes to Kwity Paye. I think we've seen his ceiling. I don't really think there's another level to be seen from Kwity Paye. I know that the the floor for Hasson Reddick over the last several years has been so much higher than what I think the ceiling is for Kwity Paye as an edge rusher. So I'm willing to accept it. Like you said, it is definitely a cheaper option than trying to sign Brian Burns or to try and sign anyone else in that sort of category. Brian Burns has had far less production, but at the same time, Brian Burns has played only half the years. So there's a lot more untapped potential. So Burns is most likely going to get a much higher ceiling in the contract situation. And of course, if Hasson Reddick really likes playing for this Colts defense this next year, which I would have a feeling he would with all those defensive linemen there that he would truly respect, and seeing a Colts team that's ascending versus an Eagles team that feels like it's descending, then you could maybe get a situation where you could get a good 2-year contract out of him next year if you were to go with that. I looked at that and I was like, man, I love Hasson Reddick. I've loved him ever since his last year in Arizona. This guy has just been a model of consistency ever since he got that final year in Arizona. And I would just absolutely love it, because if you did that, it allows for Ballard to be able to make all the offseason moves that he would want. Re-signing your big guys still leaves you some room to sign a big name free agent at safety, and at the same time getting that corner depth that you need. And then in the draft, being able to still have that number one potentially and make a move with that. So that's definitely a move where I sit back and I say that could probably be the best alternative move of any situation that Ballard could find himself in.
Right. And we've talked about it. I mean, you have Anthony Richardson on the rookie contract for the next 4 or 5 years, right? Like, you have him on a rookie contract cheap for a long time. And if he becomes what he becomes, right, this is how their teams get to the Super Bowl. This is how teams do it. I mean, we saw what the Chiefs did. We've seen what these other teams have done, where they have these, cheap quarterbacks on these rookie deals, and they just go for it, man. And they just get their guys. This is probably the most flexibility you will have if you're Chris Ballard or near the Colts ever, if Anthony Richardson pans out to what he can become. I mean, I really do believe that, Derek, because if you can do that and start getting some of these guys like Hasson Reddick, who plug and play, he's going to get you double-digit sacks. Samson Ebukam right near that. I do think, Derek, Samson Ebukam would be a great number 2. I really do believe he would be a great number 2. So if you figure out your number 1, you get your number 2, you've got the premium positions figured out on the edge, the one that has eluded you for so long. You now have left tackle, which we've talked about. You have quarterback. We think you'll probably get a playmaker or 2, hopefully. So, that is just so much, fixing so many of the problems that you had last year. And it's very doable, Derek. It's very doable for the Colts. And so do truly believe that if, the Colts are able to figure out a deal for Hasson Reddick, they will not regret it, because at least you're trying. At least you're not complacent and sitting on your hands like we've talked about, Derek. I hope Chris Ballard isn't like that. Even though you had the sack numbers, if you dive a little deeper, you can't be that oblivious if you're Chris Ballard and say we're fine at that position, because you're not. You're not. And so Hasson Reddick, a guy that you missed out on, he's available. And if you can get him for not giving away a day 1 pick, I mean, do it, man. Do it and don't look back, because that could potentially propel you, Derek, into serious playoff contenders year in and year out for the next number of years. I truly do believe that. So, yeah, absolutely 100%. Bring Hasson Reddick into Indianapolis. Bring him here and let really the defense cook, man. If they can get a consistent pass rush, add a couple more pieces on that defense, really do believe they're in a good spot.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, there's just a lot more we could go into. That will definitely be something that we will have to keep an eye out for. Man, I'm excited for it. But let us know your thoughts, guys. Hasson Reddick is being given permission to seek out a trade. Do you want Indianapolis to make that phone call and make it happen? But that's going to do it for this one, guys. Let us know your thoughts. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, go Colts.